Dear fellow truth seekers, thank you and welcome for visiting my channel, MythoReligio. MythoReligio is a series of books about religious comparison studies between the stories in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism and Buddhism, directly from their sacred books and world mythologies, hence the name MythoReligio. The purpose is to retrace the prehistory of humanity, since I am not fully satisfied with either the explanations from the point of view of creationists nor evolutionists. There are so many missing links in both explanations. If you feel the same, then you are on the right channel. In this book series, I will also analyze about the prehistory of humanity from the archaeological records, modern scientific point of view, and other alternative theories, such as the ancient alien theories and Atlantis or Lemuria legends. After thorough research of circa 30 years, I recognize many similarities between all religious stories and even mythologies, and surprisingly, some of them are in accordance or even beyond modern science that have been proven as correct. Thus, I came to the conclusion that all religions must have come from the same source. And all these religious stories and mythologies, although heavily jumbled up, are actually telling one mega story, the true prehistory of our common ancestors. This mega story is quite different than what we have been told to believe and will truly blow your mind, as it is more fascinating than our imagination. If you have watched the earlier videos in this channel, I believe you can see some of the similarities too. If you haven't and you truly want to do a religious comparative study, I suggest that you do so. The best way to do a comprehensive religious study via this channel is by watching the videos starting from number 1 and continue until this present video and so on. That way you will see a clear pattern. For deeper analysis that I cannot share in this platform due to its sensitive nature that leads to the above conclusion, kindly read the books that are available in ebook format that can be found in my website www.mythoreligio.com or the physical books at Amazon in color or black and white version. Ragnarok, the end of the world in Norse mythology. Dear fellow truth seekers, in this video I will share with you several stories from the Norse mythology that are important for our religious myth comparison study. As in my other videos so far, I won't be sharing my analysis yet, but maybe you can spot some similarities of the following stories with other stories from other religions and mythologies. Odin, one eye. The chief or the father of the Norse gods is Odin. Like the Greek Zeus, Odin has many children with several women. Odin is depicted as one-eyed and long-bearded, frequently wielding a spear named Gungnir. Sometimes he is depicted like a warrior, and sometimes wearing a cloak and a broad hat like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. He is often pictured with his animal companions, the wolves Geri and Freki, and the ravens Hugin and Munin, who bring him information from all over Midgard. And sometimes, like Santa Claus, he is pictured riding a flying 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, across the sky and into the underworld. Odin is mostly known as a god of war and death, but he is also a god of magic, prophecy, poetry, and wisdom. He lost one eye by trading it for a drink from a well of wisdom, guarded by a mysterious figure called Mimir, the wisest Aesir or god in Midgard. During the War of the Gods, i.e. the Aesirs versus the Vanirs, Mimir was beheaded by the Vanirs. But Odin managed to resurrect Mimir's head by chanting over it at the foot of the Yggdrasil tree. Thus he magically preserved the head and restored its power of speech and effectively continued using it as counsel during times of need. Now, even though Odin only had one eye, he was able to see everything that was going on in all 9 worlds. In Old English, Odin is known as Woden. Both names come from the same root of the German word Wuten, meaning fury. Both Woden and Odin are fury and madness incarnate. But Odin is tempered with a greater sense of what can be called higher civilization, duty, and obligation, whereas Woden is a sacrificial god, bloodthirsty and cruel. While Norse mythology and history have identified aspects of human sacrifice to Odin, Woden's lack of civilizing aspects through mythology paint him as even more callous, more dangerous personality. Odin had many children from several women, and here are some of them. Thor, god of thunder, the champion of human race. Baldur, god of love and beauty. Hor, Baldur's twin brother, the blind god of the night. Heimdall, guardian of the gods who will blow the trumpet signaling Ragnarok, the final battle of the gods or the end of the world. Loki, the Jotun god of mischief. Loki is a Jotun, giant, but sometimes also referred as a god of mischief and fire. He is a shapeshifter. Loki's relation with the gods varies by sources. Loki assisted the gods, yet often caused problems for them. Some writers have noted quite a few resemblances between Loki and the biblical Lucifer. Both Loki and Lucifer are associated with light. One of the titles given to Loki is Lightbringer, the same as Lucifer. They are both fallen from grace. Lucifer thought to set himself up as high as God himself, and for this he was cast out of heaven. Loki considers himself above the other gods in intelligence and stands aloof from them. Lucifer gets vengeance from God by deceiving mankind. Loki gets vengeance on Odin by being generally deceitful. Both Loki and Lucifer are bound until doomsday. The most obvious parallel is their role in the biblical Armageddon and in the Norse Ragnarok. According to the biblical book of Revelation, Lucifer will be cast into the bottomless pit and bound in chains for 1,000 years prior to the final battle at Armageddon, whereupon he will be free to lead the forces of hell against God. Loki is chained in a cavern somewhere, suffering eternal torment until he shall be freed to lead the forces of Jotunheim against Odin in the final battle of Ragnarok. Unlike Lucifer, however, Loki had several wives and several children. Again, I am only listing a few. One of Loki's wives is the giantess or Jotun Angerboda, with whom he had 3 children. Hel. Hel is a goddess who fell for 7 days and 7 nights from a cliff in Asgard. She finally became the queen of Helheim, a terrible place where sinful and cowardly people ended up being tortured for eternity, and when they are not tortured, they are to finish building a long ship that will be used by Loki during Ragnarok. Fenrir. Fenrir is a monstrous wolf. He is prophesied to kill the gods during Ragnarok. Therefore, the gods chain him using a magical rope made by the skillful dwarves, although he will eventually break loose and fulfill the prophecy. Jormungandr. Jormungandr is a monster serpent, the Midgard serpent or the world serpent. Odin tossed it into the great ocean that encircles Midgard. The serpent grew so large that it was able to surround the earth and grasp its own tail. This became the symbol of the wheel or cycle of life in Greek Ouroboros. When Jormungandr releases its tail, Ragnarok will begin. The Apples of Eden. One day, the gods Odin, Loki, and Hönir went on a journey that took them through desolate mountains far from Asgard. Food was scarce in this uninviting region, so when the travelers came upon a herd of oxen, they slaughtered one for their dinner. When they put the meat over the fire, however, It didn't cook, no matter how long they left it there. Perplexed by this, they heard a voice addressing them from above. Looking up, they saw a very large eagle perched on a nearby branch. "It is I," he said, "who by magic prevent your catch from cooking. But if you will give me my fill of the meat, then I shall release the remainders from my spell." The gods, though irritated, agreed, and the eagle flew down and took for himself the choicest portions of the ox. Loki thought this to be beyond the terms of their bargain, and in anger took up a sturdy branch and lunged at the eagle. The eagle snatched the branch in his talons, and with the bewildered Loki still clinging to the other end, flew up high into the sky. The terrified Loki begged the eagle to release him, but the eagle, who was none other than Thiazi, a Jotun in disguise, refused to do so until Loki swore an oath to bring him Idun. Idun is a goddess who is the keeper of the magical apples of eternal youth and immortality that were cultivated for the other gods. Loki, cunning as a wolf, tricked Idun to go to a forest where similar apples were supposed to grow. Flowers grew beneath the feet of Idun, who wore a cape. These flowers were supposed to guide her back to her home, but Loki ordered a raven to eat the flowers so she could not find her way home. Soon enough, Thiazi came and snatched Idun to his castle. Idun's absence caused the gods to grow old and gray, and they realized that Loki was responsible for her disappearance. Loki promised to return her, and in the form of a falcon, he found Idun alone at Thiazi's castle, turned her into a nut, and took her back to Asgard. When Thiazi found out that Idun had fled, he turned himself into an eagle and furiously pursued Loki. The gods built a pyre in Asgard, and after a sudden stop by Loki, Thiazi's feathers caught fire. He fell, and the gods slayed him. Only his indestructible sapphire blue eye remained stuck on the wall of the god's castle. The death of Baldur and the banishment of Loki. One day, the handsome god Baldur had a dream of his own death. Since dreams were usually prophetic, this depressed him. So his mother, Frigg, made every object on earth vow never to hurt Baldur. All objects made this vow except mistletoe. Frigg had thought it too unimportant and non-threatening to bother asking it to make the vow. When Loki heard of this, he made a magical spear from this plant, in other version an arrow. He hurried to where the gods were indulging in their new pastime of hurling objects at Baldur, which would bounce off without harming him. Loki gave the spear to Baldur's brother, the blind god Hor, who then inadvertently killed his twin brother with it. Other versions suggest that Loki guided the arrow himself. For that, Loki was banished from Asgard and chained in a deep cave where a snake drips venom in his face. Baldur was ceremonially burned upon his ship. Nanna, Baldur's wife, threw herself on the funeral fire to await Ragnarok, when she would be reunited with her husband. Alternatively, she died of grief. Baldur's death is seen as the first in the chain of events which will ultimately lead to the destruction of the gods at Ragnarok, where he will be reborn in the new world. Ragnarok. The coming of Ragnarok will be signaled by a great winter on Midgard for 3 years, bringing the snow, ice, and endless night. Wars, evil deeds, and unnatural acts will fill the lives of men. Fathers will kill sons, brothers will slay brothers, mothers will lay with sons, brothers will bed sisters. In all 9 worlds the call to arms will go up. Loki and Fenrir will escape from their chains. Heimdall will blow the horn so loud that it will be heard throughout all the 9 worlds. fire giants will come out of Muspelheim, led by Surd with his flaming sword. Battle between the gods and giants will finally come. Through all the time leading up to Ragnarok, Odin will be amassing his armies, the Valkyries. The Valkyries are a host of female figures who decide who will die in battle. They are beautiful women who ride through the sky, snatching up the souls of the bravest and strongest men who die during battles. The Valkyries bring their chosen elite warriors to the afterlife hall of the slain, Valhalla, ruled over by the god Odin, where the deceased warriors become Einherjar, meaning lone fighter. There, when the Einherjars are not preparing for the events of Ragnarok, the Valkyries bear the meat. Valkyries also appear as lovers of heroes and other mortals, where they are sometimes described as the daughters of royalty, sometimes accompanied by ravens and sometimes connected to swans. With fire and water the world began, and everything will be put to flames by Surd the fire giant. The all-consuming ocean will rise and submerge all in a silent deep sea of oblivion. Surd will cast fire upon the earth. The tree Yggdrasil will burn all its great branches. Skoll and Hati the wolves will finally swallow the sun and the moon. That is how the world will end. Then, slowly, from out of the belly of the deep, a new world will be delivered. A new race of gods will arise. They will find on the grass golden tablets on which are inscribed the runes of wisdom of the elder gods. A brave new earth too will be born, and two mortals will repopulate the world, a man named Lif and a woman named Livdrasir. They will take shelter in Hodmimir's wood, which is none other than Yggdrasil, the tree that frames the world. They will survive while all else perishes, sustained on the dew of the morning, which is the water of life. Herewith I'm ending this video, as well as the myth telling from the European continent. Next week I will start telling more myths that are significant to our comparison study from the American continent. Thank you for watching and hope to see you next week.